This session was recorded live on Facebook.
Okay, the next question again, the first several questions are quite related today, and I'm doing them all together for that reason. Is James Padgett different from other mediums? Yes. In several ways, actually. James Edward Padgett, there's a lot of information about him on the internet, so I don't want to take too much time in this session, but if you want to learn about him, just Google James Padgett, and I will add to this video when I put it on YouTube the spelling of his last name. But he initially found that he had the gift of mediumship by going to a medium to try to contact his recently deceased wife, and his wife did come through, and she and the medium both encouraged him to develop the gift of automatic writing. So not all mediums are automatic writing mediums. So that's one way that James Padgett is different. Another way that James Padgett is different is that he was an attorney. And so he was very interested in evidence and facts and proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that gave him a really good framework for testing the spirits. Another way that he was different, he was a man who did have a love for God, and he was a Sunday school teacher. He was a Methodist. And his deceased wife, I think her father was actually a Methodist minister. So he had some spiritual basis there. But I do believe also he had a real purity of soul. There was nothing about him that was interested in using the gift of mediumship for his own personal gain beyond connecting with his wife. Beyond that, he never went public with his mediumship. He shared it only with a few close friends. In fact, he guarded it carefully because I think he felt it was a little bit of a threat to his profession as an attorney. So he didn't do it for fame. He also never took a penny for it. So he didn't do it for money either. He wasn't motivated by that at all. So all of those things are pretty unique among mediums. Not 100%, but when you put them all together, it really did make him very special right from the start. But then it got even more special and very exciting because once he connected with Helen, and it took a bit for him to feel confident that he was actually connecting with Helen, but again, she came through with that evidence. She said certain things to him that only she and he could know, and that was how he felt confident. Okay, I've got Helen on the line here. But then once he had Helen and he knew what Helen felt like, and he could sense her presence as well, when he was connected to Helen, then he also could trust her on the other side to vouch for the spirits in the unseen, because while he could not see them, Helen could. So another fabulous indicator in a way that James Padgett was different. And the next thing that happened that was really ignited the opportunity for Jesus to have his second coming was James Padgett's grandmother, Anne Rollins, came through, and she came through with Helen, so Helen was able to affirm, yes, this is your grandmother. Well, Anne Rollins was a very high spirit on the divine love path, and she was acquainted with Jesus, the Christ, the master of the celestial kingdom, in the unseen world, and when she saw her grandson taking near perfect dictation from his wife and from her, she went and got Jesus and said, you finally have a portal to get your truth through to humanity. Jesus had tried many, many, many times. And a lot of truth has come through. Okay, a lot of truth has. But it wasn't pure. And that's what really makes James Padgett unique, is the purity. Because what happened once Jesus came, and he kicked the tires a few times, he tested some messages, getting his his message through to Padgett. And of course, Padgett did not believe that he was talking to Jesus, because who would? So he was extremely skeptical. In fact, he burned the first messages that came through from Jesus. So we don't have them, because he didn't believe it. He thought he was going crazy or making it up in his mind. As you would imagine, any sane, rational person would not believe that they were talking to Jesus. So it took some time, but Helen didn't let up, and Anne didn't let up, and Jesus didn't let up. And they kept coming through, and they kept saying, it's really Jesus, and you need to believe it because it's important. Because Jesus has really important messages to get through. And guess what? Tag, you're it. You're the only person that can do it. Can you imagine? The only person. The most recent person was in 1756, I think it was, Emanuel Swedenborg. Jesus had gone through Emanuel Swedenborg, and the way that they did it with Emanuel Swedenborg was they actually brought him in the sleep state to the spirit realm, but they allowed him to remember it. So when he came back, when he awoke, he had the memories of being in the spirit realm, but it was considered a failure by Jesus. I think Emanuel Swedenborg thought it was successful, and a lot of people who follow his teachings thought it was successful, but Jesus said in the Padgett messages, no, that was a failure, because what happened was Swedenborg, who was a minister, he put too much of his own impression onto what Jesus was trying to share. He wasn't neutral enough. So he convoluted the messages. But Jesus was hoping that James Edward Padgett would not do that. And the way to try to prevent that from happening was to get James Edward Padgett to come to God one-to-one in that relationship with God, which is what we're talking about here, in prayer, and pray directly to God. Not pray to Jesus, pray directly to God, which is why you can be of any religion, and ask God to please infill your soul with his divine love, which improves your soul condition. And so James Padgett was told time and time and time again to pray so that his soul could be developed in divine love, so that Jesus actually could get his messages through cleanly enough that Jesus himself was satisfied that James Padgett had taken the dictation clearly and cleanly enough to be considered a success. And that happened. And nobody else has ever done that.
Nobody else had done it before James Padgett, but Divine Love mediums have done it since.
And after that time, Jesus sent a cloud. He came in the cloud. He sent a cloud of his apostles and disciples and saints to come all through James Edward Padgett, saying the same thing. This is real. It's happening. Jesus is talking to you. You'd better believe it, because we have important truth to share with humanity. So keep praying and keep showing up and keep taking this dictation, because Jesus wants to correct errors from the Bible. Huge. The second coming of Jesus happened a little over 100 years ago, and we're just now starting to get the word out.